Welcome everyone to episode 75. Can you believe it? Drum Education Live. Beautiful rhyme. And today we have AJ ROUSELL. And I hope to God I said your name right.
You did. First time, which is actually quite rare. So well
Wow.
Boom! Good.
Yeah, it's normally Russell or Rousel most people come out with. So fair play.
Well, I want to get it right. What do you think, sir, is missing from drum education today?
That's a very good question. I would say that trying to reinstill that idea that drumming or just music in general is a lifelong thing that actually takes real dedication, and there's no quick fix to it, and there's no quick idea that suddenly just unlocks all this stuff. So I feel like with the birth of YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff, and there's some really good stuff on it, so I'm not knocking any of it, but I find I get a lot of students coming to me now who are very, I want to learn very quick ideas I can just use all the time. So I think trying to get back to that idea that we go on this journey for years and decades, and there is no quick fix. It's you put the hours in, and then you get better, and you sit with one idea for months, and there's no single unlockable thing. I think there's room for both. Like I said, the Instagram stuff I think is great, and the YouTube stuff I think is great, but I've definitely seen a change in a lot of my students' mindset around that. They're not as comfortable with the idea of struggling with something for ages and then getting it.
Hard work.
That's a big question, though. That's a big question.
Yeah, no, beautifully answered. I think it's spot on, really. That's what I'm finding.
I think our jobs as teachers nowadays is not explain as much technique, but explain that it takes time.
Yeah.
Because people see whatever it is on Facebook and Instagram, and they think that that person just sat at the drum kit and played it.
Yeah.
And you have to explain, they just sat and played after 10 years of practicing that.
Yeah. Seeing the end result, isn't it? If you just compare the end result, then you don't realize all the work that goes into it. And I think if we can get back to that idea again, I think it also makes practicing more fun, I think, because there's an end result coming.
Yeah. I think a big part of it too is just trying to prepare the student for being okay with sucking, and like being okay with it being hard, and just I feel like people nowadays aren't ready for a struggle. They just want it to be easy, and it's like, I'm so sorry, but...
They want it to be easy and perfect.
Yeah, but the beauty is in the struggle, like you're saying. When you get to that point, it's amazing. You're like, actually, I can do anything. I just need to put the time in.
I actually had this chat with a student today, because he was getting a bit annoyed he couldn't get something, and ended up saying to him, like, what's happening right now, no one else is going to see apart from you and me. Like, we're not showing this to anyone. Like, this isn't public. And I said, all people are actually going to see is that in 2 months you'll be able to do this. That's what goes public. And it did slightly shift I think he gave himself a bit of a break after that, and was like, oh, it is all right to not be getting this stuff first time. And I was like, outside of you and me, no one's seeing it. I'm not going to tell anyone. So, like, just have at it and just wrestle with it a bit. And learning to wrestle with stuff, I think, is a really important thing to be teaching students. So yeah, I think it's helpful, 100%. Very helpful.
100%.
Okay, so because I'm a much nicer guy than Kira, I'm gonna come with a very obvious and easy question. How did you start on drums?
I started when I was 12. I actually learned violin first of all.
Wow.
And was awful at it, and just never got any better. Never really enjoyed it. It was the only instrument my school would do lessons for. So it was either learn violin or don't really learn anything. Then I did piano for a few years, and then I was at a church in my hometown, and then saw a girl playing drums, and thought that just looks way more fun than what I'm doing. Way more fun. And just my parents got on board with it quite quickly, which was nice. They were always very much the attitude of like, just try everything and see what kind of you take your fancy. Although growing up, my hand-eye coordination was absolutely abysmal. It was terrible. So when I asked to play drums, my dad, rightly so, chuckled a bit and was like, okay, we'll give it 6 months, and then we'll go from there. And then fast forward, was it 16 years at this point, I think, and then it's good fun.
Cool.
Oh,
Nice.
good
So,
for
yeah.
you.
But you said
So-
your right hand coordination wasn't very good.
Sorry, hand-eye coordination. So
Oh,
just
okay, sorry.
yeah, just like playing sports at school, I was terrible at because my hands and
Okay.
feet just don't work together at all. So yeah, the idea of being a drummer, which obviously involves lots of hands and limbs doing different things. Yeah, I can see why they were a bit. You know, we'll see how it goes. And then
It's good for
yeah.
polyrhythms.
Exactly it. Accidental polyrhythms.
Yeah.
I'm accidentally as good as Virgil Donati without meaning to be.
Who were the first drummers that you got into?
I remember the first drummer that made me like really turn my head was Dave Grohl, because my dad's workmate was really into music, who made me like a mixtape of loads of songs, and there was like 20 tracks. No, I think like 30 tracks, and obviously like Red Hot Chilies and Audio Slave and all those kind of bands. So really cool bands. But I vividly remember Smells Like Teen Spirit being the one that I had on repeat for like 6 months. So that whole drum sound and the feel to it was just great. So I think Dave Grohl was the first one that made me go, actually, yeah, if I want to play drums, it would be in this kind of thing. And then back in the days of when I had my iPod and you could download little snippets of, I don't know what they were called, little like videos from iTunes. You could download like a free 30-second trailer. And I downloaded the Modern Drummer Festival trailers. So there's like a 30-second snapshot of Simon Phillips and Todd Zuckerman and Indugu Chancellor and all those guys. So those were my first introductions to like drummers, which I remember really blowing my mind, especially with Todd Zuckerman, just being like, I didn't realize you could actually be that good at just an instrument in general, you know, and it really caught me off guard. So yeah, I was into all the rock stuff growing up, and then I started to get into the drummer side of things a bit later on. And then fast forward to Benny Greb and Mike Johnston and Anna Canals and all those guys who I'm really into now. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah,
Amazing. So
and it's always going to be a journey.
yeah. So on the bus, I think it's where you said you were. When you saw these videos of Todd Zuckerman, were you like, oh my god, it's amazing, or oh, I'm gonna go and put my sticks in the bin? What was your reaction?
No, mine was that's amazing. How can I do that? And I think I feel quite fortunate. I think it may be something I took for granted, that I didn't realize the other reaction is something that sometimes happens, where people go, oh, I just won't bother.
Yeah.
Because I remember, especially the Todd Zuckerman video, I remember sitting there for probably a year or so, really like going through like every second of it and trying to work out why does it sound so good and how's he doing that, and I never really worked it out. And fast forward a few years now, I look back at it and I'm like, oh, okay, I can kind of pick out a few things, which is nice because it shows a bit of progression since I was 15, which is good. But yeah, I think I always kind of deliberately try to be, you know, I get more that thinking of like, if they can do it, no one starts being that good. No one's born being Todd Zuckerman level. So they've obviously learnt it somehow. So I just need to try and figure out how they learnt it, and then if I can try and emulate a bit. So no, I just found it exciting and just very inspiring, which was a nice reaction, I guess.
Have you ever felt like putting your sticks in the bin?
There's been a few where maybe if my playing's gone into a bit of a rut and I've struggled to get out of it, then that sometimes come up a bit where I'm like, okay, is it worth continuing with, if I'm being blunt? I think there's kind of sad moments where you realise you're putting hours and hours into something that there's no actual guarantee is going to pay off. And I think that's always a hard thing to wrestle with, I guess, with any freelance trade, I guess. So yeah, it definitely comes and goes sometimes, but I think it's that thing of, am I better than I was 6 months ago? Yeah. So therefore, as long as it's moving that way, then I'm happy. It's trying not to see too far ahead and then getting disheartened, I guess, is the trick.
And now I have another question. What is it for you to be better than 6 months before?
I was in what
Because
goal
you said,
wise.
am I better than 6 months ago?
Sure.
What is it for you to be better?
Oh, sure. So my main thinking normally is, are there elements of my playing that's more comfortable now than it was 6 months ago, and are there ideas that I couldn't do 6 months ago that I'm now doing? I guess more subconsciously. So the idea of, have I sat with something on a pad for a while, and is it now appearing in my playing without me kind of intentionally doing it? I think that's always a good sign. I've started filming my practices a lot more, and looking back and going, okay, so timing is getting better slowly, and touch is starting to sound a bit nicer, and so yeah, it's trying to be like, as long as my playing's moving forward, I'm happy. And I think that's what then stops that disheartening, why am I bothering? Let's just not bother, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually wanted to ask you about your mindset, because I was listening to, I think, a conversation you were having with Dave Major.
Yes.
And you have a really good, it seems like you've got a really good head on your shoulders and good approach to things. Like, it's a can-do approach. Like, why would I not do this? Talking about your drum camps.
Yes.
And I just thought, oh, goodness me, that's so good. You know, I certainly get in my head and go, oh, no, you can't do that, and fear and all of this. And you're seem to be quite, well, let's look at this practically. What's stopping me? Have you always been that way, or is it something that you have to work at continually?
That's a very good question. I think weirdly, I'm only like it with drumming and work-related stuff. I think in day-to-day life, I do tend to talk myself out of stuff quite easily. I think with drumming, it's almost not easier, but I think because there's a real passion there for it, it's a bit easier to sometimes talk yourself back into something again, or just knowing why I'm talking myself out of it. So if this is actually a really good idea that could lead to something really exciting, and just the fear of it not working is why I'm not doing it, then it is a very conscious thing to kind of talk yourself over that. So I think it comes and goes. I feel like work-related stuff, I'm a bit better at it, but it definitely doesn't come naturally. I think it's something I do have to sit down and kind of weigh up pros and cons, and I guess be a bit more what's the word? I guess self-aware would be the word of, okay, what's actually stopping me not wanting to do this? Is it a reason, or is it could go really wrong? So there's a fear there, which is big, and it's hard. It is hard.
Oh, I love it. I admire that. I think that's great. I think I wish, like, I did that a bit more and said, well, what's the actual thing here? If it's actually just fear of it failing, then
yeah, it's a big one. It's a really big one, because I get it with so I think I really evaluated last year was that I don't really do jam nights that often, and a lot of it was I taught myself into, I don't like them because it's competitive and blah blah blah, and then realized actually the reason is because it's quite a daunting thought to go and play in front of lots of musicians who don't know you. And I was like, well, actually that fear is the actual reason I'm not doing it, and because of that I've talked myself into legitimate reasons which actually aren't legitimate really at all. So I think it's a never-ending thing, just to kind of double check yourself every so often. And so it's a big thing, but I think it's a powerful thing once it kind of
And
settles,
can you spot that in your students when they're struggling more with the fear than with the reality?
Yeah, I think so, because I think I've got so one student comes to mind straight away, which is she really struggles counting out loud, but we've proven enough times that when she does, she tends to nail stuff straight away. But there's still this thing where she doesn't want to, and when I ask her why, it's very, I don't think it helps, and I don't really want to, and I don't really see the point. And I'm like, well, actually, all this is just you're a bit uncomfortable doing it, so you're talking yourself into reasons why you shouldn't have to. And once we kind of broke that down a bit, and I said, if we reevaluate every time you've counted it out loud, you've nailed whatever you've been doing. Well, this is a fear and an uncomfortable thing talking, not it's not helping. So it's I can definitely see it in some students when it comes to not wanting to look silly or appear to be doing something a bit odd, even though as a teacher you know it's going to help. So yeah, and then it's helpful because then you can kind of walk them through that. And bad, I think I said a while ago, of it's just me and you in the room. If you look silly, I don't care because I've done all this before as well. And then once they get on board with it, they see it then helps, and then there's that kind of trust thing there as well, which is then helpful. So yeah, I guess it all kind of links together.
Cool. Yeah.
Definitely. So how did you make this step from, you know, being a drummer who's performing and to setting up a drum camp? Like,
Yeah.
that's huge. It's huge. How did you even, was this an idea that you thought, all right, I'm going to give it 6 months, I'm going to give it a year? How did you make that step?
It actually kind of came out of the blue a little bit. It's one of those stories of having just one seed of an idea that you instantly talk yourself out of because it sounds ridiculous, and then when you actually sit down and go, logistically, could this work? Maybe it could. I mean, so the first one was in 2018, and the whole year, anytime something got booked or something got confirmed, every time I was thinking, like, why am I doing this? This is just like, you know, because it was a bit of a, it kind of did come out of nowhere. So the idea was that I've always loved going to drum camps, and I love it when musicians that I follow and really like, when they're touring, I used to love messaging them and saying, can I have a lesson with you as you're in my city and you're not here normally? Can I book a lesson with you? And I thought, well, actually, that's really good, and I love doing that, but I'm having to wait for bands and drummers to go on tour for me to do that. So the idea was almost, well, if I could just organize something where I invite them over, well, then I can have lessons with them, with basically whoever I want, because there's a reason for them to come to the UK. So the first person I've always wanted lessons with was Emmanuelle Caplette. I've always been a fan of her playing. I think she's killer. And I always said if she ever did a camp in the UK, I would sign up straight away. And there wasn't a camp happening. So that's when that little seed comes in, and you're like, well, if I just organize one and put it together, if I want it to happen, then maybe other people do as well. And then, like I said, you talk yourself out of it straight away, because then you're like, that's ridiculous. She's from Canada. That's logistically going to be a nightmare. And then actually thought, you know, that's just fear of failure talking. So let's sit down and actually work out if this could work. And then was fairly confident it would. And then, yeah, just bit the bullet. I brought Pete Cater and Pete Riley on board as well, because it made more sense to have 3 teachers, 2 from the UK, 1 abroad. Logistically, it just balances everything out a bit nicer. Yeah, made the poster and then just announced it and just put it out. And yeah, it was nerve-wracking how much attention it got straight away, because obviously being the first one, I think it caught a few people off guard, because I didn't tell anyone I was thinking of doing it. We just sort of organized it all behind the scenes and then just put it out, and it was really good fun. It was really good fun. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, so we're now we've just done the 4th one, so hopefully a few more to come, hopefully.
Yeah. How was it? I'm just jumping in with another one, sorry, Felipe.
No, that's all right.
How was it meeting Emmanuelle?
Oh, it's so great. I love that woman. She's lovely.
Yeah, good.
It's just nice that, like, I find in the drum world, I've rarely had it, the whole don't meet your heroes thing. Like, most of the drummers I've met who I've looked up to have always been delightful, and Emmanuelle was just great. And getting to, like, take her out for food and go for a coffee with her and chat to her about career and industry stuff, but then also just get to know her more personally was really nice. And then fast forward a few years, we did an online clinic together at the start of the year, so it's nice to have that connection for them opportunities as well. So yeah, she was great. She was just delightful, and she really set the tone for a drum camp. Like, she's still considered one of the favorite tutors after all the 4 years. People still really rave about her. She did, like, a really good job.
Excellent.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's delightful.
Now the dinosaur in me has a question. When I was a young boy, many moons ago, we would be dying to have a drum camp, because that was the only way to get information.
Sure.
You're very different from me. You're a guy who started playing drums when YouTube already existed. I started playing drums, mobiles didn't exist.
Sure.
And yeah.
I don't believe you.
I started playing drums, Nirvana didn't exist. Anyway. So, how do you make a drum camp work nowadays Because one of the things I've heard from other drummers who tried it and failed is, well, nobody wants it because they can watch whoever they want on YouTube at any time.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is where it gets tricky now, because you do have access to all your favorite drummers are just really accessible now, and I think especially with the pandemic that made it even more so, because so many drummers suddenly started offering online lessons. So I think the reason I think the Odyssey camp has done well is because I deliberately try and bring someone in who you can see online all the time, but getting them in the room with you is a different ball game totally. And that's the bit that really gets pushed, is like, so Gabor Dornier, I mean, I know he's in London, but he's like, I think he's an incredible player, and I've seen all his Drumeo stuff and I've seen him at drum shows, but actually being in the room with him while he's playing and getting to actually ask him questions there and then, and that was the year we had Annika Niles as well, so getting her over from Germany, I think that's the selling point, and that's what people want. It's being able to get access to people they don't normally have access to. And it's totally different in the room, totally different. And you find people online, it's almost surreal, because I always find people are smaller in person than they are online. And every time I've met someone...
How tall are you?
Just under 6 foot.
Yeah, that's the reason why they're all smaller.
Oh, sure. But every time, like when they've walked towards me, I've gone, because you only see them on a screen, you build a perception that they're, I don't know, just always taller than they are. And it's and just that excitement of, I mean, actually, so the first year, actually, there was a girl who came, who's a really good friend, who she texted me after the camp saying, I never thought I'd get to go for a drink and have a lesson with Emmanuelle. And she's just like, the fact that is even a thing just blew her brain. And she's like, I've watched her for years online, loads, but there's just nothing like being in the room with them. And I think that's the selling point for drum camps.
Well, no doubt about it. Yeah. Kira.
Completely. So who's on your like dream list? Can you let us in on who you would love to?
Kira?
Kira, yeah, I can't afford Kira. Her fee's too much. She's too good.
Tell me about it. I mean, that's for life now.
Yeah. I think the funny thing with the camp is I try not to almost put like a barrier on it of like no one's too big, and that's kind of
I love it.
I try and think like that, because I find it's, because like I said, you would just talk yourself out of talking to anyone. I'd love to get someone like Tommy Igoe over at some point. Even if I dare say it out loud, I'd love to get someone like Steve Gadd over at some point. Those kind of guys. There's plenty of UK drummers who are kind of kicking up at the moment, and I'm starting to notice they're doing some really cool stuff. So we're going to get a few of those in. It's trying to, every year I try and make the lineup as varied as possible, as in I like to try and get a really good educator, and then like a really good band person, someone who's playing for like a big artist, and then maybe like a drummer's drummer. So yeah, there's definitely a few on my list. I've got a nice long PDF of people we're going to try and hound at some point to come over.
So with that in mind, like how much time do you get now to practice the stuff that you want to do?
Maybe not as much as I would like, but I think a lot of that is also, do I maybe prioritize it as much as I should? So I think I'm not practicing as often as I would like, but I think a lot of that is because, especially around this time of year, obviously we've just done a drum camp, so there's a lot of build up to it, and then the month afterwards is normally quite kind of exhausting. I try and deliberately try and rest a little bit, but then it's like, well, I'm not practicing because maybe I'm not carving out time to practice, which I should be doing. But I try and, I mean, right before the pandemic, me and a friend of mine moved into our own studio space. So it's nice to now have our kits set up all the time, and we have 24-hour access, which was really helpful. So it's like, okay, we're definitely practicing more than a few years ago. Not as much as I would like, but we're kind of in that weird middle ground, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah, I guess it's always going to be like the middle ground. We will never practice as much as we would like to. And sometimes somebody calls you and say, okay, I need a drummer. I need you to play with me tomorrow. We have a gig, and these are just 25 songs you need to learn by tomorrow.
Sure.
So there goes your practice down the
Yes.
drain because you have to learn the songs.
Yeah, I do find if I have something coming up where I feel a little bit out of my depth, my practice instantly improves. So it's almost like sometimes you, I don't know, try and find opportunities like that where you're like, if I have a certain gig coming up I know is a little out of my comfort zone, or if I have a clinic or a masterclass coming up, I tend to naturally up my practice on the lead up. So I guess towards the end of the year it gets tricky because I don't really have anything coming up that's very urgent. So yeah, I think at the start of next year we'll start booking stuff in to kind of make me a little uncomfortable again, because I think when you're a bit uncomfortable, that's when the best stuff happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
Agree. I've seen that you are an author. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have 2 drum books. So the first one is The Drummer's Odyssey, which was, when was that released? 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Do you have a copy there?
So that's the first one.
Nice.
Just The Drummer's Odyssey.
Like
so that's, again, it's kind of similar to the camp. I never planned on writing a book ever. And then I got in a bit of a rut with my playing a few years ago where I was just like, I'm always playing the same stuff and I'm always playing the same grooves and the same fills and my playing's really dull. And then I kind of reevaluated a bit and was like, again, I think because I grew up in the kind of YouTube era, I was like, I'm very good at this very specific pool of licks and chops, and that's it. And I'm not comfortable actually almost like talking on the kit, like speaking on the kit and using ideas to develop flow and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of reevaluated a bit and thought, right, well, drummers who were learning 80 years ago, what would the difference have been? And the difference probably would have been they would have been happy sitting with one idea for years and really kind of getting into it. So I started writing a drum lesson for me on the 6-stroke roll and thinking, right, is there a way of taking the 6-stroke roll and thinking of every possible combination for using it all on the pad? And then I found it instantly just unlocked this new thing in my playing that was exciting, and I felt I was really developing something good. And then applied the same system to flams and then to paradiddles and then doubles. And then as I was writing all this stuff, that idea then came of I could very easily write a book around this system to then put it on paper. And then, yeah, a year later, it was all printed and in my hand, and it was a really surreal moment, like holding this thing that you've written and it's got your name on it, and it was very odd. So I was really proud of it. I really like it. It got a 4 out of 5 in Rhythm magazine, which was a very helpful review. That helped kind of get it out there, which was good.
Well done.
That's amazing.
The second one was this one, which is the field manual for the church drummer. So the idea behind this one was I grew up playing in church, and I still play in church now. And I realized churches have the most wide range of drummers, I think, of any establishment, I guess, where you got drummers who have been playing for years professionally, playing in their churches, but then also churches who don't have a drummer, so someone just said, well, I'll give it a go trying to learn it just so we have someone. So I thought, well, actually, if I could write a resource that kind of helps all of them, then that could be quite exciting. So the idea is that whether you're professional or you've been playing drums 2 weeks, there's enough stuff in there to kind of help you with playing in church and what it means to kind of be a church drummer, because it's a very different style of drumming to kind of other stuff. So yeah, and that's a bit more of a book. It's like actual writing, whereas the Drummer's Odyssey is more notation. So yeah, and they're both on my website, and nice. It's the last one for a while because it is quite time consuming putting a book out.
Keep going, Kira.
Oh, keep going. Okay.
I know you have your list.
I do.
Very organized. I love it.
Yeah.
No, I just can't retain information in my brain. So, what are your goals? You were saying earlier about the concept of you don't want to think too far ahead because you might, talk yourself out of it. Do you have any major goals for the camp or for yourself?
Yeah, so I think the way I kind of view setting goals is I'm really happy with everything I'm doing at the moment, and everything I've got going on I'm really enjoying. So I want to do all of that just on a heightened level. So it's almost like I love doing the camp. I'd love to get to the point where it sells out every year and it's like a staple of the UK drum world, where just every UK drummer knows about it and they all want to come. And then I love the kind of gigging side of my work at the moment, but I'd like bigger gigs in the future. I'd like the bands I'm working with to be doing bigger stages. I love doing clinics and I love doing masterclasses, but I'd like to be doing that on a bigger scale in a few years. So slightly larger masterclasses or doing drum shows, or do you know what I mean? So it's almost everything I'm doing at the moment I'm really enjoying, because that keeps me present as well. That keeps me present and thankful for what's going on now. But looking ahead as well, if I could just build everything I'm doing now onto a bigger level, then I'll be happy.
And do you have a plan for that, or at the moment it's just wishful thinking?
It's kind of a bit of both. It is wishful thinking, and there's definitely
always
ideas.
Wishful thinking, and then we try to draw a plan for it.
Yeah, sure. I try and avoid the step-by-step thing. I did try that when I was at uni, and I find it only really works if every single step works. And as soon as one doesn't, well, then you're improvising and adapting. So, so there's definitely, ideas for like, okay, this side of my work I'd like to grow, and here's how I'm probably going to do it. Same for the camp. It's like, okay, it's a once a year thing at the moment, which is great, but there might be a chance I'll grow it into, full drum camp at the end of the year, but I might do a smaller version of it at the start of the year, and we'll kind of grow it in that way. And then the gigging side of it is the idea of I need to be meeting more people and I need to be networking with more people. So how do I do that? So yeah, I guess it's pinpointing not the problem, that's the wrong way to put it, but pinpointing why is this area of my work not growing as much as I'd like, and then how do I counteract that?
Did COVID make you reassess or change any area of your life or any plan?
Yeah, I'd say. I'm definitely not taking on as many gigs now, but more in a way of what type of gigs am I taking on. So I was doing loads of function gigs before the pandemic, to the point where it was almost too many. And then the pandemic, I kind of remember sitting at home being like, okay, I kind of miss the money from functions, but do I really miss doing them? Probably not as much as I would have thought. So it's like, well, so we're still doing them, but I'm reducing how many I'm doing because I want to make time for the other stuff that I would want to be doing more of. So playing with artists or touring with bands and doing that side of playing. So definitely reassess that a little bit. Realised that the only thing I really had going through the pandemic was teaching, because obviously all my gigs got pulled. And actually reassessed how much I actually really enjoy teaching, and it kind of almost not really reassessed, actually, it's probably the wrong word. It confirmed that I still really like being an educator, and actually even when that's all I was able to do for a year, I was still quite happy. So I was trying to think, okay, how can I reassess how much of that I'm doing, and how can I deliver that better, maybe. So yeah, there's definitely points where, because all you had to do was sit at home, wasn't it, and think. That's all we had time to do for a year. So thinking, okay, what could I be doing differently when the world moves back to some sort of normal, and what would I take with me? And because even the pandemic, it caused some opportunities that never would have come otherwise. So the idea of we moved the 2020 drum camp, we moved that online and did it fully virtually, which I didn't realize until afterwards, and Dave Major told me this, that's never been done before. I didn't realize that until after the camp. So thinking, right, so online drum camps can work, online masterclasses are a thing, and people obviously enjoy them enough to get involved. So it opened up all these other opportunities that probably wouldn't have come unless we were all told to stay home, which is really, really odd when you think about it.
How did you actually do that? How did you do it online? Like, it just sounds very stressful, like trying to get people all connected, internet please work. How did you even do that?
It was super stressful. It was like I was really proud of it. I'm glad we did it. I probably wouldn't do it again. So it was the idea of how do we deliver something that still feels like a drum camp when no one can leave their room or actually physically see anyone. Firstly, the idea was to reduce the numbers straight away. So I like halved how many people were allowed to come. So the Zoom chat was nice and small.
Oh, cool.
Then the next thing was, if we're going to do this online, then the lineup needs to be as exciting as I can make it. So I think this is where the camp got quite exciting, because it went fully global for that 1 year. So the tutors were, so actually I taught that year myself, which I always said I would never do on an Odyssey camp. But for that one, for multiple reasons, it kind of made sense to kind of take one of the sessions. So it was me from England, Dave Major from Scotland, Camille Bigeault, I think I say her last name, from France, JP Bouvet from New York, and Sarah Thawer from Canada. So 5 tutors, all from different countries. And then we had people signing up from Belgium. We had someone from Chile who booked onto it, someone from Spain. So the idea was, okay, so it's a totally different thing, but it offers this whole new set of stuff, which is irrelevant of where on the planet you are. You can log in and chat to Sarah Thawer in a really intimate Zoom meeting, you know?
Yeah.
And then, so we still did stuff like goodie bags. So I still got them all some goodies from companies, and so most year companies send me some goodies to kind of give away in goodie bags. And this year, instead of them obviously coming to the camp, I sent it to them in the post, so they got like a nice delivery with loads of like merchandise in it and whatnot. Got all the material printed up into some really nice camp books and stuff. So it's almost all the stuff you'd normally get from a camp, just it would be delivered to you rather than you would come to Bristol. So yeah, but then like the internet stuff was a pain, because my internet in my studio totally died the week before, like just totally went. And I was like, well, at least it's the week before, not during, but it's still stress that isn't fun to deal with.
Yeah.
True.
But yeah, it was good fun. It was good. When everyone appeared on the screen, that's when you were like, okay, this is going now, and everyone's here. And everyone was so excited for it. I think everyone's they just wanted something drum related to do.
Yeah.
Obviously all drum shows were cancelled, all clinics were cancelled, and camps and everything. So just to still be able to do something was a really nice moment.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Good for you. What do you think is the most important lesson you can teach a drummer?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a very good question. If I had to pick off the top of my head, I would say that your playing is only half of what you get booked for. So I think the other half is just being actually a decent person and being a good hang and being humble and all that stuff, irrelevant of how good you've got. Because I think, you know, I've played with a lot of musicians who are really talented and just unbelievable, but they're so difficult to hang out with, you just don't work with them again, you know? And I think the drumming is only half of it. So I think if I'm giving advice, it's like, here's my one nugget. It's like, practice as much as you can, but then also develop yourself as a person. And just be a good hang and just be a nice, decent person to be around. And then you're the package, in theory.
Exactly.
Yeah, love
That's
it.
right.
Be a nice person.
Yeah.
Yes. Be kind. Kindness is good.
Easier said than
Agreed.
done.
Yes.
But now
Amazing.
then, I'm gonna end with a question, which is the other side of the coin of Kira's question. What was the most important lesson you've got from a teacher?
Again, really good question. I remember years ago, a teacher of mine said that he said one of the worst things ever is to keep comparing yourself to other people with where they're at. And I think that's something that's always stuck with me, is the idea of everyone's got their own voice on the drum kit and everyone's got their own character and everyone uses their playing differently. And if you're constantly comparing yourself to someone who's 15 years down the road from you, it's just a really, I think, self-damaging mindset. So his advice was always just work as hard as you can and be the best version of you that you can turn into, and you'll always be happy and you'll always kind of have this inner sense that you're doing all right. Not trying to compare yourself to someone who's been doing it longer than you, or if they've got opportunities you haven't got. So yeah, I think that was good advice, because it's just really good for staying grounded and just saying like, I'm just AJ trying to do AJ's thing, and let's not self-compare too much with other people.
Great.
So yeah, that stuck with me.
Excellent.
Nice. Yay!
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for having
much
me.
for hanging out.
That was lovely. I enjoyed that. Thanks for having me.
We did too.